the book of Job is just in front of the book of Psalms in the Old Testament. Will you take your Bibles this morning and turn to the book of Job, chapter 2. Job, chapter 2. The book of Job, we begin at verse 1 of chapter 2. Job 2, 1. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil? And still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause." So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face." So the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life." Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speak. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Samantha Mishke is a 17-year-old Australian who lives in Los Angeles. But just this past October, she was in Cairo, Egypt, and she was apartment hunting with a young Egyptian girlfriend of hers, 19-year-old Noha Falsey. They were in a 12-story apartment building, and they were looking at a second-story apartment which Samantha was considering renting. Suddenly, the unexpected happened. The apartment collapsed. It literally fell in upon itself. And Samantha and her friend found themselves trapped in a hallway that did not collapse in the apartment that they were looking at. The experience was a little bit like being locked up in a tube. Everything around them was darkness. They could hear the cries of other survivors. They could hear the barking of search dogs. They could hear the rumbling of equipment, but they couldn't see anything. Rescue didn't come to them as quickly as they hoped. 10 hours passed. Another 10 hours passed. When 24 hours had passed, the cries of survivors who were near them began to fade away. The two girls were able to hear the sound of equipment as it moved twisted metal and pulverized masonry and concrete slabs from the area above them. Finally, after 12 more hours had passed, some dogs that had been brought to the scene by a volunteer crew of German rescue workers located the girls. The dogs alerted the search workers, and the search workers found the girls by following their cries for help. After 36 hours in the darkness of that trap, they were rescued, and they were taken to a hospital in Cairo. A doctor in the hospital reported that even though they were bruised, even though they were dehydrated, they were in pretty good shape. The two girls were very fortunate indeed. By Tuesday night, the death toll in the collapse of the 12-story apartment building had risen to 25 and would no doubt go higher. But these two girls had passed through the whole experience. They were survivors. Now, I think you will agree with me that very few of us are likely ever to be in a building which collapses around us, and we should be grateful for that. But it is also true that very few people go through life without having an experience so serious and so severe that it seems to them that their own personal world has collapsed around them and that they are trapped in a web of difficulties and problems. And when something like that happens to a Christian, then he or she may be crushed by the experience, or that Christian may become a survivor. And this morning, my friends, as we stand on the threshold of 1997, looking forward into a year where we do not know a single thing that is going to happen to us, it may very well be that in the year ahead we will need to know how to be survivors. How to be survivors. And this morning I'd like to discuss that issue with you for a little while under the following topic: Satan, Job's wife, and Job. That's not hard to remember, is it? And it's the title of my last message to you in the year 1996. Satan, Job's wife, and Job. Now, I really do not know what year it was when the biblical story of Job took place. I only know that it was a very long time ago. But you see, Job was in his day a very rich man in terms of the way wealth was measured in those days in flocks of herds. The Bible tells us he had 7,000 sheep. He had 3,000 camels. He had 500 pairs of oxen and 500 female donkeys. He had a very large household with filled with servants. And in addition to all of his wealth, his prized possession was his family. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. Now, Job was not like many rich men are. He was not a man who had no regard for God. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us he was blameless and upright, that he feared God, and he tried to avoid evil. And there was no way that when Job entered into this fateful year, whatever year it was, there was no way that he could imagine or guess the awful calamity that lay ahead of him in the year he was emperor. But the day came in that particular year when one day a messenger rushed into the presence of Job, and the messenger told him that the oxen had been plowing out in the field and that the female donkeys had been grazing nearby, and that the Sabeans had raided the donkeys and the oxen and taken them all away, killed all of Job's servants except for one man who was now bringing him this message and reporting this tragedy to Job. And while this man was still talking, a second messenger arrived. And the second messenger informed Job that the fire of God had fallen from heaven and had devoured all his sheep, and it had devoured the servants who were taking care of the sheep. And the only person who had survived all that was the messenger himself, who was now reporting this tragedy to Job. And while he was still talking, another messenger arrived. And this messenger reported that the Chaldeans had formed themselves into 3 raiding parties, that they had raided the camels and taken them all away, and that they had killed the servants of Job who were taking care of the camels. And the only servant who was able to escape was the messenger who was now reporting this tragedy to Job. And as if those 3 disasters were not enough, a 4th messenger arrived while the 3rd messenger was still talking. And the fourth messenger reported to Job that his 7 sons and 3 daughters had been drinking wine in the house of their oldest brother. That a violent wind had come out of the wilderness and had struck the house, and the house had collapsed, and all of his children were dead. And all of the servants who were tending them were dead, except for this one man, the messenger, who had now come to Job to report to him destruction. Four hammer blows. 4 disastrous reports, but this one may have been less than an hour. And the Bible tells us that when these 4 reports reached Job, that he tore his robe and he fell on his face, he shaved his head, and he worshiped God. And he worshiped God. And then he spoke words that are among the most amazing words that have ever come out of the lips of a human being. This is what Job said. He said, the Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Do those words send shivers down your back? Do we not ask ourselves the question, if we had been in Job's place, could we have said that? Could you? Could I? You know, in the motion picture industry, they are very fond of sequels. So we have Jaws 2, and Home Alone 2, and The Godfather 2, and on the list goes. And sometimes life is a little bit like the motion picture. And folks, this morning I'm very, very sorry to tell you that Job 1 was followed by Job 2. Job 1 was followed by Job 2. You see, there came a day when the angels assembled in the presence of God. They are called the sons of God, no doubt, because each of them was directly created by God. And into their midst came the most beautiful and splendid angel that God ever created. The wisest and most intelligent creature that God had ever made. And we know his name as Satan. And God said to Satan, "From where are you coming?" Now God knew where he was coming from, but he wanted Satan to express it. So Satan replied to God, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it." Do those words sound familiar? They should. Do you remember that the New Testament says to us, be sober, be vigilant, for your adversary, the devil, is walking about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And even though Satan didn't put that part of it into words, the reason he was going to and fro on the earth, the reason he was walking back and forth, was because he was stalking those who belong to God. And he wanted to find someone whom he could crush, ruin, devour, smash. He didn't say that, but God knew it. And Satan had his eyes on Job. So God said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? That there's no one like him on earth? An upright man and blameless who fears God, tries to avoid evil, and still he holds on to his integrity, although you move me against him to destroy him without cause." God is saying to Satan, even though you wanted me to take away my protection so you could attack him, And even though you did attack him, still he is holding fast to his commitment to me. Have you seen him? Have you observed him? Do you realize that there is nobody like Job on the earth? And Satan replied with an answer that meant something like this. Right. Sure. Of course he holds on to his integrity. You wouldn't let me touch him. You wouldn't let me attack his body. Skin for skin, says Satan. All the man has he will give for his life. Just stretch out your hand and touch his flesh and bone. Just touch his body, and he will curse you to your face. He will curse you to your face. So he wanted an opportunity. He wanted a chance to get at Job again. Do you see the depth of Satan's wickedness? Job had passed through that first series of disasters with fine colors. Satan can't hear a single good thing about this. Oh, of course, he didn't curse you. Even though Satan said, if you take everything away, he will. Of course he didn't curse you. That's because you protected his body, but if you attack his body, he will curse you. So wicked and evil is Satan that he cannot see good in the very best man on the face of the earth. You know what? Maybe the day will come, or maybe it has already come, when you think about a certain Christian brother and sister, and you say to yourself, I don't like that. I really can't see anything good about that. I can barely stand that. What is there to commend that person? If you ever feel like that about any fellow Christian, you have at least one person on your side. That's the devil. For out of the depth of his own wickedness, he cannot see loyalty to God. And he is prepared to prove once again that Job serves God only out of Job's personal self-interest. So God allowed it. God allowed him to touch Job's body. He told Satan he couldn't fit it, but he could go forth and touch his body. That's what Satan did. He went out, and he struck Job's body, and Job's body was covered with painful boils from the crown of his head, swollen and full. And they were so painful that he had to take a potsherd and a piece of powder, desperately trying to scrape the boils, I suppose, break the boils. And that itself was painful. He had lost everything. And now he had lost his health. And if you were tempted to say, God laid too heavy a burden on Job, God allowed too much to happen to him, may I remind you that the New Testament tells us there has no temptation, there has no testing taken you except that which is common to man. And God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tested above what you are able, but will with the temptation, with the test, also make a way to escape that you may be able to bear. God never allows his people to experience more than they can take with his strength and grace. And the fact that he allowed all this to happen to Job was a compliment. It was a divine compliment to Job. He felt that Job was strong enough to take it. And he let it happen. You know something? Job's wife was burdened very much the same way, minus the water. By relying upon God, she could have taken it too. But the difference between Job and his wife was this. Job took it, and his wife did not. And as Job sat scraping his painful forehead, Job's wife turned to him, and she said, I can't stand your attitude. Are you going to sit there in your self-righteousness and hold on to your loyalty to God? So don't you understand we've lost everything? We've lost our wealth. We've lost our precious children. Your body is covered with sores. Job, you still hold fast to your integrity? Give it up, Job. Give it up. Curse God and die. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You hear those words? Satan has devoured Job's wife. And now Job's wife is speaking the very words that Satan himself would like to put into Job's mind. She is encouraging Job to do the very thing that Satan wanted Job to do. He says, curse God and die. Ladies, will you forgive me for what I am about to say? If you are married to a Christian husband, especially if you are married to a Christian husband who wants to serve God, are you aware that you can either be the greatest encouragement that they possibly can have outside of God himself, or you can be a tool of the enemy, and you can beat your husband over the head when it hurts the worst? You don't think that could happen? You don't think so? How about this? Husband says, honey, time to get ready for church. And the wife says, I've got a headache. I don't feel good today. Why don't you go to church without me? And by the way, take the kids so I can have a little peace and quiet around the house. Or, how about this? Honey, time to go to prayer meeting. I'm too tired. I can't go to that. You know. Or better yet, we don't have to go to every prayer meeting. We might have to stay home and watch TV. Or maybe you're married to one of the members of the board. And the board makes a decision and you say, did you guys decide to do that? Is that the decision you made? Oh, that's dumb. Why did you make that decision? Or maybe your husband tries to teach Sunday school, or maybe he even preaches. And the wife says, you don't know what to do. Why don't you leave that shop to somebody who really put it together? You don't think that happens at Victory Street? You don't think so? Think again. Think again. Don't you folks see that Job's wife was a loser? She was a spiritual loser. And spiritual losers are easily manipulated by Satan and then become a weapon against their spouse. It doesn't matter whether you're a husband or a wife. Unless you walk close to God, God can turn you easily, almost overnight. Satan can turn you easily, almost overnight, into a vehicle for his message, for his words, for the discouragement that he would want to pass on to your spouse. You know, if I had been married to Job's wife, You know what I might have said to her? I hope not, but I might have. I might have said, shut up. Why can't you encourage one another? Why are you always criticizing? Wouldn't it be nice if you were in my corner at least once in your life? I say I might have said that. But Job didn't. Did you notice what Job said? He said, you were talking like one of the foolish women. Notice he doesn't say you are a foolish woman. You're talking like one. And I think Job means something like this. He says, dear wife, those words are not worthy of you. I would have expected words like that from a woman who has no sense of God, who has no good wisdom from God. That's the kind of person I would have expected to say something like that, not you. And then Job adds a statement, my friend, that is so critical, so important, so vital, that it would be very difficult to overestimate its importance. And he says to his wife, shall we accept good from God, or shall we not accept adversity? Wow. Listen, Job is saying God is sovereign, and we are happy when he gives us good things. We accept those. But God is still sovereign. Shouldn't we be able to accept trouble, disappointment, frustration, and adversity from his hand as well? Wow. Did you know that there are some Christians who will tell you they are really devoted to God, and that they will always stick with God? They'll always serve Him. They'll always love Him. But in their commitment to God, they have some fine print. You know what the fine print says? I'll be loyal to God as long as He treats me right. As long as I don't lose my job. As long as I don't lose my health. As long as my family goes well. No, as long as I don't have problems with my kids. If God treats me right, I'll treat Him right. And that's wrong. That's wrong. Shouldn't we be able to accept adversity from God? Not just simply good. Do you know that I don't even have to go out of the auditorium this morning to find a wonderful illustration of that? We have a couple in our church who have been with the church for a long time, and their dedication to God is well known to all of us, and we have watched them serve God loyally over many years. But during the past 12 months or so, they have faced adversity, real adversity. And they have impressively demonstrated to us their continuing loyalty and commitment to God. I'm talking, of course, about Marcia and Carlos. Haven't they been a challenge to us over this past year? You know what I think? I think that the best sermon that has been preached at Victor Street Bible Chapel in 1996 was not preached from this pulpit. It was preached by Marcia and Carlos as they have gone through this year dedicated to Jesus Christ, accepting not only the good that has come from His hand, but accepting adversity as well. How about we are facing a year where we do not know what even the first day of the year will bring, much less 365 other days. And of course we'll be happy if God blesses us with His joy. But are we prepared in submission to God to accept adversity and to remain loyal and true? There was a little girl going to the doctor for a brief but painful surgery. And when she was ready, the kindly doctor said to her, "Now this is going to hurt. So you should feel free to cry and scream as much as you want." And the little girl looked up at the doctor's face, smiling, and she said, "I would rather sing." So that's exactly what she did. She had all during her brief but painful ordeal. It was not a spot, not a groan, not a tear. Now, folks, in 1997, some of us may in fact choose to sing. Some of us may in fact groan. But wouldn't you rather sing in sickness or in health, in good times and in bad times? Would you not rather sing to the glory of God? And maybe before the New Year's dawn, in a couple of days, it would be good for each of us to sing in our hearts words that we're familiar with and which the songwriter has said so well. I don't know about tomorrow. I just live from day to day. I don't borrow from its sunshine, for its skies may turn to gray. I don't worry o'er the future, for I know what Jesus said. And today he is beside me, and he knows what is ahead. Many things about tomorrow I don't seem to understand, but I know who holds tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand. Shall we pray? Father, thank you for your wisdom, grace, and sovereignty. That you know just what we need in the years ahead, and that you are able to lead us through good times and bad with loyalty and dedication to yourself. Give us the grace that we will need in 1997. We pray in Christ's name.